I'm curious to get your impressions on Martin St. Louis. Well, he's an adult. His growth spurt is clearly over, but growing as a hockey coach. Now, the Montreal Canadiens have played 33 games as of this recording. The splits are crazy in terms of how this team is now 2 games above 500 versus the first 16 games of the season where they were getting caved in on the regular, right? Like, we don't have to go that far back when the team was losing 4 in a row, losing 6-3, losing 7-2, losing 8-2 and 6-3 to Seattle and teams like Washington, right? Like, when the Canadiens lost and they got caved in, boy, oh boy, it was an avalanche. Talk to me about what you've seen. Let's divvy up the two halves. Let's get two halves. The first half of the 33 games, the second half of the 33 games, and why the team started so poorly. I'm curious to get your take on why the team was so bad in the first 16 games.
Well, I think the team didn't play as well in the first half of the season, mainly because the blue line was too young and there wasn't a lot of experience there. And I'll start with that because I think everything follows from what you build on your back end. I think you look at championship teams, it's all about a good 1 through 6 on the blue line. If you were to ask me who my favorite was to win the Stanley Cup right now, I'd look at who had the best 1 through 6 on the blue line. I'm thinking Vegas is probably the best team in the league right now if I was to pick a Stanley Cup winner here right before Jan 1. And the Canadiens weren't very good on the
Yeah.
back end. You know, you have Hudson who's playing well offensively, but going into the season, first 16 games, 2 games of NHL experience under his belt, right? So that's a
Yeah.
guy circle. I think he's been a lot better overall in the second 16 games compared to the first, even though the offensive production was there at the beginning. How about Arbor Jacki? His first 16 games compared to his next 16 games. All right, now I'm giving you 2 defensemen who I think are better. That's 33% of your blue line. That has improved. You know, so I think it really starts from the back end and cleaning up their systems, cleaning up the fact that they don't have a lot of experience, and they had some guys struggling. Let's not forget Caden Gooley, another very young defenseman, around 100 games of NHL experience. He was in and out. He got hurt. There was some erratic play on his part as well. I think he's been a lot better. So if I was to circle one thing that's been better for the Canadiens, it's the fact that the blue line is gaining experience and confidence.
Yeah, that to me has been a revelation. And the one name you dropped there, Arbor Jacki, is a completely different player. And nice to see the shot coming back to his game, his rookie season. The offense was there, and then I think there was a combination of things. The sheriff moniker, the personality, getting endorsements right away. And listen, I don't fault the guy. The guy's he's 20 years old. He's a
Sure.
kid, just came out of the Costco aisle into the National Hockey League making crazy money. Like, it's easy to get wrapped up into that. But it's the self-correction, which takes us to Martin St. Louis. Like, they were 5-11. The team more or less was 5-11 in the first 16 games. Now they're on 14 wins, right? And they've leapfrogged teams like Buffalo and Detroit, no longer the cellar dwellers of the Atlantic Division, and still 7 points out of a wild card spot that is held on by Ottawa. And again, there's a correlation. Show me goaltending, good goaltending. I'm going to show you a team that's winning. Linus Ullmark starting to get some personal momentum, and Ottawa's winning. Not a coincidence. You see growth from Martin St. Louis. The question I have at the front of my mind is, I've believed from the get-go that MSL is the right coach at the right time. And I still think the timing is right, as everybody's learning together and growing together and showing growth. What you see from Martin St. Louis, from your perspective, do you see someone that you're comfortable with moving forward, or have there been some red flags for you that make you wonder about when the team is ready to take the next step? Can he join them?
I absolutely think he can join them when they're ready to take the next step. And
Okay.
I've been a big supporter of Martin St. Louis.
Yeah.
I don't think the head coaching, the lack of experience as a head coach matters whatsoever. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people like to play this up. Oh, he was a peewee coach.
Yeah.
Like, listen, Martin St. Louis is a Hall of Fame player, and he's been around a lot of really great coaches in his career, and he's spent time with a lot of great coaches in his career. So
Yeah.
because of that, he has experience, not actually coaching behind the bench, but being around guys who have. And I'm sure he also has open lines of communication with a lot of coaches and former coaches. I think he's a hockey savant. I think he is a brilliant mind when it comes to the game of hockey. And I think for me, and
Yeah.
this really goes against, Shaun, what we see around the National Hockey League in general. But if I'm running a team, if I'm running an organization and I want it to be a successful organization, I want stability and I want to have a guy in place that is comfortable with the managers, that the managers
Yeah.
are comfortable in him. I want the Pittsburgh Steelers model, man. I want the Mike Tomlin. I want the four coaches in 50 years. That's what I want if I'm running a team, because I think it's a lot easier to look at a coach who he's in place no matter what. I'm a player and I got to follow his lead because that guy's not changing,
Yeah.
rather than a team that can be like, oh, if we check out right now for a good month here, maybe we're going to get somebody else calling the shots. We don't see that in the NHL now. Now you always see teams, oh, we want that new coach bump. We want that new coach bump. And look at all this. Look, this team won the Stanley Cup after changing a coach, and that team won the Stanley Cup after changing a coach. You
Yeah.
know, who is considered the best coach in the league right now? It's probably John Cooper, right? Or at least a lot of people would
Yeah.
go in that direction. John Cooper to me is the perfect example of what Martin St. Louis is
That's a
doing
good
right now.
point.
John Cooper didn't start coaching till he was like in his 40s.
Yeah.
And then he gets to Syracuse with all those guys in Tampa Bay, and he goes from the American League. He wins with all those guys, though. They knew him. The Tyler Johnson, the Andre Palat, the Alex Killorn.
Yeah.
They're with
Yeah.
him. They graduate into the NHL with him. And now it's a little bit different in Montreal, but these young players in Montreal, they're building like John Cooper built with the American League players, but they're just in the NHL now and they're growing together. I think it's the perfect situation, man.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate for a second. Let me take up the other side. And let me throw this proposition at you, okay? Now, obviously we're going to be playing a little bit of a hypothetical. So hang on to your seat. So remember they beat Anaheim in a shootout, right? The 3-2 final. What happens after that? The drubbing by Pittsburgh, the 6 unanswered 9-2. What happens after that? They go to Winnipeg, a scheduled loss. Even though it was a 4-2 final, Winnipeg scores twice on the power play as the best power play unit at home, and they score an empty netter. Habs lose 4-2. So hypothetically, the Canadiens perhaps go 0-3 going into the Buffalo game and the home and home with Detroit, right?
Yeah.
What if they had gone 0-3 there? Knowing that they're a terrible 5-on-5 team, like the minus 25 or whatever the number is, 5-on-5, knowing that they would be on a winless streak, knowing that when they make mistakes, they can never seem to stop the bleeding this season. That has been an issue, though it has been corrected. But I'm talking in the hypothetical. Do you think that Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes would look at that hypothetical and said, well, we have the power to do something here. We can't be losing steam. Everything you're saying is valid, bringing up John Cooper, Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers, stability, consistency. I get it. But in that hypothetical, that they go 0-3 and lose in the manner in which they do you think it gives them pause when you couple it with the bad 5-on-5, when you couple it with the mistake-prone season and can't stop the bleeding, Mitch? That's problematic. In my head, that's a problem.
Absolutely not. I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. This is their guy. This is their guy through
But
and
don't you
through.
need good habits? Like, you don't want to be Buffalo, right? Like, everyone says you can't be Buffalo. That is number one. You cannot
Yeah,
be Buffalo.
yeah. But one of my big issues with Buffalo, and there's a lot of issues, I'm just talking about one of them,
Yeah.
is they haven't had any stability. How many coaches have they gone through? They've
Oh
done the
my
blame the
gosh.
coach
Yes.
thing
Yes. Yes.
over and over, and they've done the blame the managers thing. How many
Yeah.
managers have they been through?
Who was that guy they brought in there? It was the soccer guy. They brought in I forget his name.
Ralph Kruger. Yeah, he had the
That's it.
soccer
Yes.
background. Yeah,
Correct. Yeah. They
yeah.
went
No,
so
but
unconventional. Yeah.
what was it? Four coaches in 6 years or something like that for
Yeah.
Buffalo? Like
Yeah.
that
I agreed.
that to me is the recipe for disasters. Here's what I'll tell you. This is their guy.
Yeah.
They're very confident in him. Now, I always wrap up my Delmar post game show on TSN 690 around 11:15, and I can tell you 9 out of 10 times when I'm leaving the building, I take the elevator down and I pass by the Canadiens dressing room on my way to the exit.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times that I do so, I see they leave at the same time as me. Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, Martin St. Louis. And they're always together leaving the
Right.
rink. The three of them. They're very, very tight. And I think, look, maybe some people wouldn't like that. I think it's a very healthy situation. And I also think like you give up the you give out the like scenario where like what if they lost all these 3 games
Right.
decisively? Like, well, what's does that change Martin St. Louis' knowledge of the game? No. Does it change how the players view him? No. Does
Mm,
it change what his message is and if the team believes in his message, the players if they're bought in? No. Like I really don't when I'm looking at the coach and I'm looking at a coach and evaluating him, I don't want to look at the micro. I really want to pull back, look at the macro, and think, okay, where am I going, and can he get me there? And for me, even if the Canadiens have lost the 3 previous games, the answer to that question is yes. I believe he can get to where we're trying to go.
ultimately, I think you're right. Ultimately, I think you're right. I'm just trying to present an argument on the other side of
I
things, and
understand, yeah.
and you know what? Before I knew, because it took forever for us to understand who the goaltender was on Saturday night. Like they were keeping it until I think Renaud Lavoie finally let the cat out of the bag that Sam Montembeault was going to get his 9th straight start in goal right on this playing the second game of a back to back. Even the Red Wings changed goaltenders
Look,
for
can I tell
Saturday.
you? Can I tell you something about that?
Yeah,
I'm convinced of this.
tell me.
The reason why it took so long to make that decision is
Mm.
because there was friction there. There was an internal debate, and everybody wasn't on the same page. I can tell you that almost for fact.
Because you know what, I have chosen to read a lot into Cole Caulfield. I want to go on a run comment after they beat Buffalo, and I think if MSL had started Primo, I think he would have pissed guys off. I think he would have. I'm not saying he would have lost the room. I'm not being that dramatic, but when Cole Caulfield publicly says he wants to go on a run, Caden Primo doesn't give you your best chance at winning a hockey game and going on a run. They've won 2 games in a row like 7, 8 times. Like they want to go on a
Yep.
run, and I think it was very important that MSL listened to that message.
Well, before the game last night, Martin St. Louis
Yeah.
got really ticked off, and it's kind of
Yes.
rare for him. And he was mad when he was asked about Caden Primo. And to me, his reaction to the question made absolutely no sense because like I know how things work internally there. Chantal would have given him a heads up that he's going to be asked that question. Also, he's not a moron. He
No.
knows it's a back-to-back situation. He's going with the starting goaltender in back-to-back nights,
Yeah.
and he's going to be asked that question. Like you have to know. He's not dumb, but he reacted very abruptly and
Yeah.
angered and ticked off by the question, which to me suggests that,
Yeah.
inside that room between the walls, it was also a debate where probably everybody wasn't in agreement.
But who would he? I mean, because he leaves there, he goes, ah, tabarnak. Moi, je suis prêt pour le match de hockey. À soir, moi, je plane pour le match de hockey. Tabarnak. As he walks away, like, I was kind of surprised by that reaction too, because it was an innocent, obvious question.
It's an
The
obvious
French,
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
the French reporter, qu'est-ce que vous faites avec Caden Primo, coach? Something like, what are you doing with Primo along those lines? Um, so where do you think that comes from? Like, if you had to, what's your educated guess?
I don't know who would have been on what side.
Yeah,
I don't know. But, my guess would be the goalie coach would
right,
probably have wanted to go to
right.
Primo.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my guess,
yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah,
So
like it's
like
not as long.
I
I'm
don't
glad
love
you didn't say Hughes or
speculation.
Gordon. I'm glad you didn't say Hughes or Gordon because that would be. I'm glad that wasn't your answer.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I'd be
Yeah,
surprised
yeah,
if
yeah.
they
Me too.
start
Yeah,
getting into the coaching decisions from a day to day like that to me is a recipe for disaster. You don't want management interfering with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think it was probably within the coaching staff, and I think a good debate is healthy.
Agreed.
But
Always, always.
It sounded like Martin St. Louis wanted to go to Motembo because the way he said, I'm focused on a game tonight,
Yeah. Yes.
right? So that
Yeah.
that means he wanted to start
Yeah.
Motembo. Now, if you're the coach though, sometimes you can't just look at tonight because you have to look at the schedule you have ahead. And yeah, maybe Motembo gives you the best chance to win tonight. But if you start Motembo tonight and then you start him Monday and then you start him
Mm.
Friday and then you start him, you start him Saturday and start him Sunday, at some point you're not giving yourself the best chance to win because yes, Motembo's the better goalie, but if you tax him, he's not going to be
Yeah.
able to play up to his best
Correct.
capabilities.
That's Mitch Gallo. You can listen to him weekdays between 10 and 2. And of course, after every Montreal Canadiens game, and obviously a must follow on all your favorite social media platforms as Mitch delves into the 3 things to take away from a Montreal Canadiens game night as